Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan for a special celebration,
Yes.
500th episode. Did you know that, Cranky?
What?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't think it's really right. I think we've done more than that. There was like a numbering snafu early on, or I think we started over after a full
I
season.
think we
So
started counting at number 433, maybe. Could that be possible? No, that's amazing. I had no idea. I'm not the show historian. I was all ready to gloat about my Gators going to the Final Four to celebrate, but no, this is actually more exciting. 500 episodes, Grump.
isn't
That's
that crazy? I thought you were celebrating
Jesus.
the Gators just got a 4-star
We
corner
did. We got a cornerback,
commit.
yeah, for next. Yes, but I'm really celebrating the fact that your one seed in the West Florida Gator basketball team and myself will all be in San Antonio next weekend for the Final Four.
There
So
you go.
that's exciting. Good stuff.
It's crazy how the SEC has crept into the basketball world in the last like
It's
15 years or so.
yeah. Well, I mean, the league is so flush with money that you can only spend so much, I guess, on football, and boosters want to get excited about basketball too. I mean, it's NIL has definitely made it faster. The transfer portal has made it easier, and these. It's interesting too because like most SEC arenas for basketball are pretty crappy. If you watch Auburn at Bama and you see Bama's arena is kind of dumpy, and even the O'Connell Center in Gainesville is hardly NBA standards, whereas they have these palaces for football. But I think the more that if we're going to start an arms race in basketball, you might see some major pushes for really nice arenas with the club seating and all the all the fixings to make money. But yeah, two SEC teams in the Final Four, and there could have been potential for four. It's pretty amazing for a football conference.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
For a conference that Danny Kanell says is no better than any other conference.
that guy's a dick with ears.
Anyway, this is not a basketball podcast. We're back
We're
for
barely a football podcast.
so we're not quite ready to dive into the draft stuff quite yet. So this is kind of our last episode before we do the deep dive into draft things. Want to talk about the coaches? What is it called? Convention? Coaches convention?
Coaches, yeah,
Whatever.
conference convention, yeah.
Yeah, coaches conference. Yeah, that might be right. We've got some proposed rule changes we want to go over, and I want to before we get into the draft stuff, I want to assess this roster and what holes remain following the first wave of free agency that the Giants were I would say pretty damn active in.
Yeah, it's inactive. Yeah, I think they fortified the depth on this team quite a bit. I think that was an important step in building foundations.
Yeah, 100% agree. But let's get started with some of these proposed rule changes, and I do expect that one or two of these will be
And
changed or close.
and we were recording this on a Monday night. The expected vote for all of this is on Tuesday, so you may or may not know the
Mm-hmm.
outcome of these votes by the time you listen to this show.
I do want to start with the one that I think is most likely to change, and I don't. You'll have to tell me
Call
which
you
team
out.
proposed them if you have it. Um, but the proposal is to change the playoff seeding, so it doesn't change who is in the playoffs, only the order in which they are seeded, based entirely on record, not counting division title. So, in the event that you have a 8 and 9, NFC West Seattle Seahawks, number one spot, they are not getting the higher seed over a 12-5 Green Bay Packers who are in second place behind the Detroit Lions who have 13-4. That sort of thing is what they're proposing, and I think that there's an actual chance that this one will change.
I believe it will be changed. It is the Lions who proposed this, so
Okay.
that not surprising that an NFC North team with so many good teams and wild cards that were forced to play on the road against inferior division. I'm all for this. I mean, divisions are arbitrary. They are purely just based, for the most part, on where you're located. You know, if you know if divisions are reseeded every year based on performance of the previous year and expected strength of schedule, and there was something where they were purely balanced out, that's one thing. But just be, the Eagles, the Giants, the Commanders, and for TV purposes, they stuck Dallas in there with them. Sometimes you're going to have a really good conference and a really bad conference, just based kind of on the luck of where you. I prefer being a really good team, beating the teams you need to beat in the regular season. So I'm hoping this one passes. I've left Grump speechless.
No, I'm just on mute. I'm dumb.
Oh.
I think the main thing that's important for me is that you retain the teams that are entering the playoffs the same way. So not the same order I'm okay with, but I do find the value in the wild card. I think that even if you have a worse record than some other teams, winning the division that you're in is still worth getting into the playoffs. I mean, if you're in a stacked division, you can't help that. You can't help that your entire division is tight. And coming out on top in your division is ultimately worth something. It's worth getting into the playoffs. Is it worth getting in over a team that won more games than you and is in another division with another team that's got even more wins than that? I don't think so. But I do think that there's value in making sure that each division is represented in some way, because you just can have an imbalance like that, where you just have a talent imbalance. And even if all of those teams have similar 500-ish records,
Yeah.
I don't know. I still think that there's value there.
It's an extreme example is what happened in college football last year in the playoff, where, winners of obviously inferior conferences got an advantage over the second and third best SEC or Big Ten team because they won a conference. Now, winning a conference should get you into the playoff, but should not give you advantages just because you won with an easier path. So that's an extreme example of the college football playoff, but I think the same principle applies to this. You win a crappy NFC South, you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats. You deserve to be in, but should you enjoy the spoils of winning it over, a team that had a harder path to probably get a harder record? I don't believe that's.
I also think fair. That there's at least a hypothetical scenario in which a division in which all teams are close to 500 aren't necessarily crappy. If all teams are pretty good and they all have to play each other 2 times a year,
yeah,
it can weaken all of their records to the point where, at first glance it looks like none of them are good teams, but they might actually be better than some wild card teams. Even though the record is better by the wild card team or whatever. So
the best thing about the NFL compared to college with that effect is it's strictly based on the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
There's no opinion involved.
Right. I agree.
I still think Ohio State's better, even though they didn't win their division. There's none of that. The numbers are the numbers. You win, you lose. The tiebreakers are very written in stone. This is, how one beats the other. So when you have all of these, we have this whole intricate system of tiebreakers to separate, who should be ahead of somebody else, except or if you just win a division again, which is arbitrarily put together. So I think we make it as merit-based as possible.
Agreed. This is probably the lightning rod rule change proposal. And it's to eliminate or make illegal the tush push. And I think specifically having, is it specifically having the quarterback shoved from behind by offensive players or any player?
The Packers introduced this. It would prohibit an offensive player from pushing a teammate who takes the snap from center.
Right. A teammate who's lined up directly behind the snapper and receives a snap. Yeah, so having people lined up right behind the quarterback ready to push him forward. I don't think that I think there's a chance that this one gets
I don't.
I don't think it's going to happen. What am I trying to say? That it gets
I,
upheld, they make the rule change. I think there's a slight chance, and the only reason I say that is because, in my opinion, the NFL operates 90% of the time in favor of excitement and 10% of the time in favor of other things such as player safety or something else. And I think that the tush push is ultimately made football a little bit less exciting to watch by their standards. You get, a 1st and 10, then it's 2nd and 6, then it's 3rd and 4, then it's 4th and 1, and you tush push, and then you do the whole thing over again. That's less exciting football for them.
but what's
So
less exciting? 4th and 1 and going for a tush push, which is for the majority of time successful, or punting. Punting's not exciting.
punt return for any amount of yards is ultimately more exciting than anything that happens on a push.
I guess. I mean, how many punt returns do we really have though? The number punting is down across the league again because not just for the tush push, but
Just
offenses
overall
are more
going for it
aggressive.
and
Yeah.
just going for it on 4th down. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's not being legislated out of the game, but it's evolving to a much lower
Well,
usage and impact. So
let's analyze a little bit of what's happened here. And I'm not saying that the NFL is this self-aware because I don't think they are, but they have legislated the game to be offensive hungry. They've moved starting spot from the 20 or closer to much further out. Not the 25 as a bare minimum for touchbacks, and we'll touch on that in a little bit too. They've legislated a lot of hits out of the game. They've made a lot of 15-yard penalties, a lot of automatic first downs. They've incentivized throwing the ball downfield. And what they've done is they've legislated the game in a way where no one needs to do a lot of that stuff now because they've realized they can just do this kind of nonsense and matriculate down the field in a less exciting way. And ultimately, if they want the ball thrown down the field, they actually need to start it further back. They need to I'm just. I do think that it makes it less exciting to watch, and that is the microcosm of why they might uphold this rule change. I don't think they'll lie and say it's for player safety too, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think this is an example of sour grapes. I think
Sure. Yes.
again, the team that's doing it is a team that's I don't think well loved around the league. I think it's something where they were innovative and they came up with it first. They are extremely successful and it's hard to replicate by other teams. And I think they feel it's a competitive disadvantage. A disadvantage because they can do something well that nobody else can. That to me that's sour grapes. And
I
I don't
agree.
think
Yeah.
I don't think any of these decisions for any of these rules necessarily have anything to do with excitement. I think it's about competition and I think it's about, you know, how does the game how and again ulterior motives of why one team proposes something over the other, but I don't think excitement is at the very top of the list for any of these things of why they want to do it.
You mean in terms of the teams making the proposal?
Yes.
Oh,
And I
of
think
course
even
not.
and I think even the vote I don't think
No. I'm not saying
I
that.
think it,
I don't think Jerry Jones gives a shit about that. I think that the NFL and I think Roger Goodell and the decision makers, those are the ones who are most interested in the excitement of the game above all else.
but I don't think Roger Goodell I think it's the competition committee votes on it. And I think
Yeah,
and they're
come
tasked with
on.
of course. Then
Of course, you're right, but I mean, if the NFL wants something, they know who to grace to make it happen. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, we're not operating in a fucking democracy here. Let's be serious. Yes, it's a vote, etc. But if they want the right things done, then they'll do the right things. They'll make it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen every year. You know what I mean? Like it may be a 4-year plan of making sure that this happens so that this happens. But I mean, this is one of the most powerful companies in the United States.
Mhm.
So, like for instance, I fully believe that sports gambling is the juggernaut that it is mainly due to the NFL. That's my personal conspiracy theory.
So I think it's almost the opposite. I think the NFL is so much more popular because than any other sport because of gambling. I
That's
think as
exactly what I just said.
oh, I thought you said the opposite.
No, that they
Yeah.
instigated the legalization of sports betting in many states over the last couple of
Well,
years
because of football is the big
because
yeah, sure.
they're in the business of watch our sport. Yes, but
Well, yeah,
I think that they greased those wheels in
well,
Washington.
yeah, when also states were like, we know how much money we are losing out on participating in gambling. Gambling is, we're never going to crack down and eliminate gambling. It's not happening, so we might as well participate in it. I
Sure,
don't think it,
but I mean
and,
we're at the point now where broadcasts are spending significant airtime during said game
yeah,
talking about lines, overs, parlay bets. I
because
mean
a very,
that doesn't happen. I don't think without the NFL making that happen.
of course, I think it's a symbiotic relationship.
Hmm.
I think more networks know that so many people are interested in there purely from a gambling standpoint, and the NFL knows that gambling leads to more eyeballs.
Right.
So they're working all together, and the states are they're all for it because it just includes some more gambling and more revenue for them, and the federal government too, because you're taxed, you know, on a federal level for income that you if you win. So
Um, ultimately, though, I don't think that the tush push is going to be eliminated this year, and I don't think it should be.
agreed.
Here's part of the reason why. Everyone thinks it's an automatic play. The Eagles are the only ones that do it with a high level of success, and they get stuffed. They've been stuffed on this play many times this season. It is not automatic even for them.
Mhm.
And they're the ones that do it the best. So it's not something like where it's not like, I don't want to derail the conversation, but like
Well,
steroids in baseball, where all of a sudden there's like 25 people all hitting 50 plus home runs, and it's something like, we got to get this under control. This is, it's only one team that does it with any level of good success.
yeah, and that's the difference between this and moving back the extra point, for example, where it was like, well, it's not automatic, but it's very close to automatic, but they
Mhm.
actually changed the rules to make it not so automatic. So I don't think they'll ever ban the tush push. I could see down the road potentially rules that modify it a little bit, maybe, but I can't. To me,
I
it's
could
kind of going
see.
back to the original for the way the game was played was basically this.
Well,
It's
that's
a
why I
derivative of
don't I don't
rugby.
I don't have a problem with this. In my opinion, this is closer. This is more safe than when they allowed offensive players to push their own players downfield, where you have a 300-pound lineman going a full head of steam and crashing into a pile just to push a guy another 2 feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that to me is a true player safety issue. However, I could see this rule being overturned if someone got grievously hurt during a tush push. And I mean, like, grievously, like like a Ryan Shazier style and injury that's
Yeah.
just a bad optic for the game. I could see that's where you know maybe it happens, but I don't think it happens until something like that happens.
I don't think so. And again, the odds of those injuries are very low, and they could be
Agreed.
randomly and nothing to do with the play itself.
No, I think it would just be the nuances of bodies crashing into each other the same way on any other play.
Yeah.
Here's a rule proposal that I'm in favor of, and I think this one is the Lions as well. Eliminating the automatic first down on defensive illegal contact or defensive holding. This one really drives me crazy because it is such a, I don't want to say, it's such an opinion penalty. You could call probably illegal contact or defensive holding by the letter of the law on every single play.
Hmm.
And they distinguish the difference between that and pass interference, with a 5 yard penalty as opposed to a spot foul or 15 yards, but they still give the automatic first down. And to me, there is a small problem when your best play on 3rd and long is to hope for a defensive holding and just find your matchup where you can see the defensive holding happening the easiest, whether it's a one-on-one on the outside or a particular defensive player that's known for being a little bit more grabby, and throwing at it and just getting the automatic first down when the pass itself would have never been a first down. If he caught it and ran, he's probably still not, like, all those things, they drive me
Well,
crazy. And I'm not talking
well,
about the
that's
Giants or a specific game. It's something I see across all of football. It just drives me crazy that it's just automatically it's an automatic first down because a guy got held for 1 second where he was held just the same the play before, but nobody cared because we just decide when to enforce that rule. That just drives me crazy.
it drives me crazy because pass interference most times is to prevent a big play from happening, and it's blatant. A guy is not turning his head. a guy's clearly beaten, just, you're not catching this ball. Where holding seems to be an actual football play. You might have an arm somewhere, but you're not trying to prevent somebody from catching a ball. It's very, to me, they're two completely different things. And, you know, we're getting away from officials. This is where the human element, I think, needs to still be part of the game for officiating. To me, the human element of, well, oh, they missed, guy was out of bounds. Well, he screwed up the play. Well, the human element. No, the human element is intent, I think, and we're losing that. You know, believing something is intent and not like automatically giving this a first down for something where, you're trying to, and some, most of the time also, you're not necessarily even in pass coverage. You're just holding because you just, you know, gets in your way and you just have hands up. So I agree. I think you need a bigger distinction between holding and pass interference, and a big way to keep that difference is, you know, if it's less than, if it's 5 yards and you needed 8, it's 3rd and 2. I don't believe it should be automatic first down.
Yeah, well, 3rd and 3, but yeah, I agree with you. And I think the major difference is that I think you kind of touched on it, but like pass interference is usually pretty obvious. Like he's not turned around, he's colliding with the guy, he just tackled him because he was beat. It's pretty clear and obvious that it impacted the result of the play. That's usually what passing. Holding sometimes is like at the break, a guy's jersey got, and it sometimes holding looks worse than it really is. You know what I mean? Like a jersey being snagged may not impede a runner that much, but look really bad.
And also, you can have contact with a guy up to 5 yards, right? So sometimes it's just, it's your spacing, and you're like, oh, you're a yard past that imaginary line, and that's holding all of a sudden. So it's kind of like, maybe it's a little bit of laziness, maybe it's a little bit of just unawareness of where you're on the field, but I could see
the punishment for that is insane. Giving an automatic first down on 3rd and 12, and at 6 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, this guy's jersey got tugged just a little bit, and it's a automatic first down. Drive stays alive. It's a killer penalty, and the repercussions are just wild to me. I'm not a fan.
There's no reason to kill a butterfly with a hammer.
Yeah. This one drives me nuts. They want to move the kickoff touchback up to the 35-yard line as opposed to the 25-yard line. I don't get this one.
So basically, you giving a team maybe they need to go 25 yards potentially to kick a field goal if you have a really good leg, especially late in the game.
Well, I mean, and this in this day and age, like 25 teams have a kicker that is pretty money from beyond 50.
Right. Wow, it's a big blast of thunders outside. I guess God completely agrees with me with this.
It's super weird. I heard it too, and we're miles apart.
We are 40 miles, at least 50 miles apart.
Yeah.
Wow. But anyway, I mean, the trend in the last 10, 15 years is to basically legislate kickoffs out of the game. They're so concerned about safety that they're doing everything possible to, not have returns. And this is the exact opposite of that. You're encouraging kicks to land on the 5-yard line or, right at the goal line, and encouraging a kick return. So what do you want, league? Do you want them or you don't want them? I just think, again, the punishment of a kick of a touchback is too great of a punishment for what you're actually doing.
I feel like I don't Google this enough. I should. My biggest thing is I feel like the NFL talks about every single year that they change the kickoff rules, how the number of injuries on kickoffs has dropped from the time before, and yet we continue to legislate only this one play. And I don't think that they really ever show us the numbers. Like, I think that they're lying, because I got to be honest. There was a time in which I could agree that it was, when you're live at the stadium, all those TV breaks, you're very aware of why there's a break. When there's an injury, there's a cart on the field, there's guys in a ring around him, or everyone's standing around while the medical staff. Everyone knows why we're not playing the game in those scenarios.
Right.
If you're watching on TV, maybe you can forget in between breaks, or maybe they don't even tell you that's why they're going to commercial break because it happened off screen, which it often does on kickoffs, right? An injury.
Yep.
And I remember there was a time in which there were a lot more injuries on kickoffs than there are now. But they have legislated this kickoff how many times in the last 15 years?
Well, there's a lot less kickoffs returned than there
Sure.
were before too. I mean,
And
it's
they keep acting like they've done something, and yet they keep fixing it as if they haven't done something. You know what I mean?
well, this is just counterintuitive to what they want to do. I mean,
This is stupid to me.
I would just assume just bring back the kickoff to the original yard line wherever it was and just kick it and let's go.
So yeah, it seems as if the point of this is to punish touchbacks so much that you incentivize the return, which puts the whole safety issue completely back into the spin cycle, which
Right.
it doesn't make any sense. And honest to God, if you want to do this, like you said, just move the kickoff spot back to its original spot so they're not kicking from damn midfield. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just drives me nuts because I feel like they are not saving any lives here, and they just keep making the one play to be. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily their bad rules, but I can't ever get a grip on what the damn rule is when it changes every year.
I mean, the whole thing with the kickoff zone and all that stuff, I'm still a little fuzzy on what exactly the rule is on
It's
it. And
stupid.
we had
It's
a whole
dumb.
season go on. It's like something as basic as kicking the ball when really nothing happens shouldn't have such a convoluted rule associated with it. And that's kind of what we got to. You're doing, gymnastics to prove your point or trying to get to a result that you want. And it just is really silly.
And my final point on this, because I don't want to talk about this anymore, because we talk about it every year. We do.
You-
We talk about it every year. I don't think that this rule change is going to happen. The big thing is no one ever talks about how many guys this rule affects. Like, this is some guy's only job and only chance to shine is being good at this. And I don't mean the kicker. I mean the special teams guys. The guys who are only on this roster. He's a very good corner. He's just not better than the four guys in front of him. But his pathway to the roster was also being a great gunner or whatever. And you're just taking the play away from him. You're taking that opportunity. You're literally taking that opportunity away from him under the guise of player safety when I don't really think you've made anyone too much safer. So that's my big gripe with this is that this affects some people's entire livelihood on top of just annoying the rest of the fan base.
Yeah.
One last one I want to talk about is they want to expand replay to include, clear and obvious objective things that we see on the broadcast to allow for that to overrule the on-field officials. And this is my one chance to talk about spring football and its role and what it does for the NFL. So even if you don't watch it, this is what's important. Their R&D. Their R&D for the NFL. And like that's actually written into their agreement. They have like a separate contract where they test out things for the NFL. And I'm hoping that one of them is that they have Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira in an office watching the game on all monitors with all angles, and they have free reign to overrule officials at any time for anything that they see. They typically don't get involved in penalties, but this kind of shit, the objective, no, he was out of bounds at this yard line. It happens. It happens quickly. He communicates with the on-field official. His voice comes through the stadium PA, so the whole world understands why the ball is moving or why this is happening, and it happens fast. That's the main thing. I would think that the number one complaint about replay's role in sports, but specifically football, is how much it slowed down the game. And I think that the UFL does it in a way that it doesn't feel slow. In fact, I think overall their games happen quicker.
Let's go back to why do we have replay in the first place? There is two reasons why, and they're not mutually exclusive. One, to get as many right calls as possible. And two, to eliminate egregiously wrong calls. The first one, is almost impossible. Was he out or safe by, a half of a millimeter? Well, it still might be, maybe, I don't know. But somebody that was clearly out, that needs those type of things have to, and that is the time issue. If something you can tell on a first or second, maybe a third look, out or safe, inbounds, out of bounds, touchdown, not a touchdown, call stands. I mean, that is a fair compromise to think, 'cause you want to get rid of egregiously wrong calls. Getting rid of egregiously wrong calls will make the percentage of right calls infinitesimally, that's even a word, higher. You're not going to get perfect. I mean, we could spend 40 minutes looking at the Sabruder film to see if, the guy got the first down or not. And what are you actually gaining? You're gaining a pissed off 70,000 people in a stadium, people potentially tuning off to somewhere and never coming back to your game, just to get, perfect being the enemy of very, 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 very close to being perfect. So, you know, let's remember why we're doing replay in the first place, and let's kind of stick to that kind of ethos when we're applying, and it should apply to all facets. If something is egregiously wrong, you're right. The voice of God should come down and say, "Listen, that's wrong. This is what the right was." And I don't care what the umpire, the officials union or the umpire union, what they have to say, if they get embarrassed or not. We're not here to serve your jobs. We're here to get right calls and make the game fair for both teams, because there are rules, and the enforcement of rules shouldn't change. The rule is a rule is a rule. So that's my annual rant on replay.
I know that there is the potential that this might embarrass an official or that official, but I think that the Angel Hernandez of the world and Jerome Bolgers of the world are only known by fans because they can't be overruled. I mean, Angel Hernandez can now on a manager's
Well,
challenge.
yeah, well, he's gone too.
Yeah,
Finally, he's been removed. But how long it took? 15 years of bad calls, and
right.
wow, another call by Angel Hernandez overturned. Another one called overturned, and we're not even talking yet about robo umps for strike zones, which is a whole nother
Totally
ball of
different thing.
wax.
Yeah.
Correct, right? And we're just talking about out safe. And we're talking about touchdown, not touchdown,
But I mean,
foot
like,
3-pointer, not 3-pointer. All these things. Yeah.
I'm just saying in these situations where you in the UFL where they have the official come down from the booth and just overrule the call, and it's in one swift motion. There is no discussion because he's the one who is able to see it 2 and 3 and 4 times. Um, does anyone even know which official made the wrong call? Do we even remember that the wrong call was made and that it was adjusted in game without the need of a challenge or much of a delay at all?
Well,
No, no one remembers any of that
the
shit. So
officials should be thought of as a collective crew,
that's what I'm saying. I mean,
not
he's part of that crew. It would be no
right.
different, in my opinion, than, one guy's on the far side, one guy's on the near side. The far side guy says, I actually saw both feet. They were both in bounds. The near side guy says, the other foot was
They
kind of blocked.
literally,
I couldn't see it. They do this every single play.
in soccer, they literally call it the fourth official in the booth. He's the one who overrules. They go to VAR, and that person looks. They call him the fourth official, not the
Right.
voice of God, not some outside source. He's part of that crew. He
Correct.
just happens, instead of standing on the pitch, he's sitting in a booth. And I think if we kind of reframe this to be they're part of a crew, and the 11th official just happens to be sitting up there with override ability and proactive ability, they're a team. The
Yeah.
umpires should be judged based on their crew's performance, not in each individual one.
And
That's
also,
a fair compromise to me.
nobody should be embarrassed because if you get 99% of calls right at full speed live with no chance at a replay, then you're doing an excellent job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That guy exists for the 1% and to make it right and to do
You
it
know,
quickly. I don't
you
think
know,
there's a problem with that.
you know who Dom Denkinger is?
No.
Dom Denkinger was the umpire in 1985 when there was an obvious wrong call in the World Series, which gave the Cardinals ultimately a World Series win. We know his name
We
because he was wrong. If He had the same call was wrong, overturned by replay. It was right. Nobody remembers the
Nobody
play.
would know.
Nobody
Yeah.
remembers him. So, you want to be embarrassed for 30 seconds that you made a wrong call, which was rectified, or do you want to be known forever as the guy who fucked up?
Yeah, exactly. Those are kind of the major rule changes. There are some other ones. There's some other procedural things, but those are the ones I think were
Yeah.
most interesting, most likely to be either discussed, or
And
most
most
likely to be.
impactful for the game going forward, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Switching over to the roster side of things for the Giants. So after this first wave of free agency, we're now gearing up for the draft. I would think that outside of Aaron Rodgers, we're not going to expect any other big name free agent to sign anywhere before the draft. I don't think.
Boy, that guy just weighted himself out of me not caring at all or being interested in what he does anymore.
And to be honest, I don't think he's signing before the draft anyway.
At this point, he shouldn't. It'd be kind of stupid to.
I mean, I am seeing reports tonight, Monday night, that there's a deal already in place with Pittsburgh, but they're rumor reports and, whatever. But if there's a deal in place, I feel like there would be more people reporting on it. That's all.
If there was a deal in place, he'd be signed.
Yeah.
What are we fucking around with?
Well, I mean, it's him. You never know. But
Right.
with that being said, I do kind of want to just tap your brain as we go through the position groups that the Giants have addressed and tell me. I guess there's really three possible answers here. There's the would you like to address this with a second wave free agency guy? So basically a plug. You know what I mean? That's the majority of what second wave free agency is going to be. Or is this a position that you would like to build through the draft? And then I guess the third option is I'm perfectly fine with the way this room is.
For right now, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Or I would say for right now in the near future.
Okay.
And I guess we'll start with the big kahuna, and that's quarterback. You've got Russell Wilson for this year. You've got Jameis Winston for this year and next year. And you've got Tommy DeVito through 26. I think he signed a 2-year deal.
I think so too. This is one of the few ones I'm gonna have like a two-part answer. I guess for 2025. I'm fine rolling with these guys, but I'm always in the back of my mind. Well, what's after that? And if I'd say being very consistent on this, if they love somebody, get him. If they don't love him, I'm fine with this group, and then we'll see what's going on next year. So I'm gonna tilt this a little towards 2025 and say we're fine.
I'm going to agree with that. I think that there is no impetus for them to deal with the quarterback position for 2025 in terms of the draft. They certainly don't need to attack it with a second wave of free agency. They're set for the room for this year.
Can I ask a hypothetical for you real quick?
Well, really quick, just to finish my thought.
Yeah.
The only thing is, if they're going to punt on this for this year, they need to be plans in place that are obvious done this year. Like, for instance, they should probably be trading draft picks to ensure that they have 2 firsts to move up next year or something like that. I'm not necessarily saying it has to be that, but I just to do nothing at the quarterback room in the draft and then just be like, well, we'll just deal with it next year with just Jameis Winston really as your guy next year.
Or hoping we're 3-13 and we're the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I don't want to live that way.
Well, also, your best laid plans can end one game by playing the Colts in Week 17 and winning.
Well, of course, but I mean,
right.
I don't think that, signing Winston and Wilson and everybody else that they did this year, they're trying to finish anything less than 8 wins.
I think they signed all these guys to have a competent offense.
Correct. Yeah.
To not be a complete broken offense.
They don't want to be finishing in the top 3 in the draft. Basically, is what I'm saying. They're not. That's not their aim. So I would think that that's not their plan. So I'm okay with them rolling with this room, but I still feel like I would be comfortable if they had drafted someone this year. I know that that's probably not Cam Ward. That might be Shadur. That might be Dart. That might be Shug. That could be McCord. I have no idea. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but it shouldn't be just like a random dart throw of a quarterback prospect. Like, they should really like him.
They should like him. And I guess what is their tolerance for risk? Because if you start getting past, the guys at the top may not necessarily be, surefire Hall of Famers, but when you start getting into the second and third round, there's more and more risk that those guys may not pan out at all. So it's how much of a dart at the dartboard do they want to throw? No pun intended. This year, or just let's get our ducks in a row for next year.
Right. It comes down to workable traits versus unworkable traits. Um,
Question for you.
mhm.
I don't know the answer. I know in basketball you can't do this, but theoretically, can we trade Jameis for picks like right now, or is there a holding period in the NFL where you sign somebody, you can't trade them for X amount of time?
I don't believe that there is such a rule. I don't know what his contract looks like in terms of its possibility for doing that, but
Mhm.
I don't think that there's a specific rule against trading somebody you just signed.
Right, because in the NBA, if you sign a free agent, you can't flip him like 2 weeks later. You have to wait like half a season or something. So
I
okay,
I've never heard of such a rule in the NFL. So
okay, just
perhaps
wondering.
it exists, but I don't think so.
Because again, we've drafted two quarterbacks. I mean, we've signed two quarterbacks, and if we potentially either draft one or we decide we're kind of later on in the season want to prepare for the following draft, is Jameis's low contract something that might be attractive to get another pick for
100%.
something?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think so.
Okay.
Running
If
back room.
my question is when can you do it? But okay,
Yeah, you
let's
can
move
do it
on.
whenever, but yeah.
Right. Okay.
Running back room. I am perfectly fine with this room the way it is.
Me too. Same. It's good.
Wide receiver room with Neighbors, Slayton, Wandale, Hyatt, and then mostly scrubs like Smith Marset, Ford Wheaton, Pascal Humphrey, D. Williams.
I think I would want to get another guy in the draft.
I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna fully. I wouldn't say bank on Jalen Hyatt being a bust, but I am at the point now where I am ready to move on from him. This is going to be a different year for him. I hope this is probably the most hope he can have to be productive with Russell Wilson at the helm. Russell does love to push the ball downfield. He's very good at it. So this is Jalen Hyatt's year to kind of show out. But even so, I'm not going to change my opinion on Hyatt just because the quarterback changed. You know what I mean? Like a good receiver could make things happen. Jalen Hyatt is not improving on his own through
You're getting
various reports. This is not just my opinion.
we're putting him in the best position to succeed, but it's up to him to be able to run routes and
Mm-hmm.
catch the ball, get separation, do all those things, pass block down the field, all sorts of things. And if that switch doesn't turn right now, he's useless. So
Yeah.
I think I just want to have. I'd love to have like a second scary threat, and we have a bunch of competent guys behind neighbors, but no one that really scares anybody. And I would like to have a guy like that. If we can get someone in the draft that's kind of like that's a legit number two guy that could be a one if we needed him to be.
No, see, I actually have a different opinion. So I know I led off with Jalen Hyatt, but I actually think where I would like to see them do the higher draft investment is the backup slot spot. And I say backup because Wandale is only signed through 2025, so he's in the last year of his contract. I'm a bigger fan of Wandale than I think a lot of other people, but he's still only 24 years old this year. I think he's a tough son of a bitch. I mean, how many times is he catching the ball 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage? He's got to fight for 8 yards, and he's getting smacked around, and he does. I think that he is looks bad numbers wise because he was a product of a shitty offense.
I don't care about his numbers. To me, is he someone that keeps defensive coordinators up at night about?
No, but that's not what I'm saying.
That's what I'm looking for.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but I want that to be in the slot position. I would love to have a Cooper Cup style guy be
That's fine.
replacing Wandale Robinson in a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would like to see, Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, and this mystery guy in 2026 and some of 2025 be the tandem. And then, worry about the Darius Slaytons later. The big wide receivers on the outside, I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, but you can sign the free agent. You can get, like guys like DJ Chark are just as good ish as Darius Slayton, and they come all the time. So that's, I don't know, that's sort of my opinion.
That's fine. Okay, good.
The tight end room, how do you feel?
If we can get a quality tight end in the draft, I'd go for it.
I am comfortable with this room for this year, but I'm not super comfortable with all the needs on this team. I don't think that the draft is really the way I would want to approach this. However, I am of the opinion that if a good tight end starts tumbling for stupid reasons in the draft, this is one that they should snatch it up because they do need talent here.
I wasn't prioritizing drafting a tight end over other positions. I'm just saying how I would upgrade the position, and I think this is not a. I mean, they're kind of placeholders now. If one was available to draft, that could upgrade the room as a whole. I would. I can see that.
I'm just going to go broad spectrum here. Offensive line. And for me, this is I need them to draft a tackle. I mean, I get it. They got Hudson. I get it. They got Forsyth. I get it. They still have Illuminar. They still have Andrew Thomas. To me, I want a guy that's supposed to be a starting tackle in a year drafted this year.
All those names you said, with the exception of Thomas, are placeholders. Yes. I need a starter. I need someone to start even like the next generation of this offensive line, because Andrew Thomas is not getting any younger or healthier. JMS to be determined. The guards are kind of placeholdery in their roster spots for the next year or so. We need to start building a foundation for the transition from this core 5 to the next 5.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And highlight, underline, exclamation point, the Thomas isn't getting any healthier. I mean, every year, we can set our watch to the downfall of the Giants season starts roughly when Andrew Thomas starts not feeling well. Whatever that the case may be. So that cannot happen anymore. You know what I mean? Like, fool me once, fool me twice. How many times are we going to be fooled by this? Andrew Thomas needs a competent backup so that he can rest when he's injured and not play through an injury.
And also not, and even take a blow every once in a while too. If we're up, if we're up or we're down significant, he doesn't need to still be playing.
Exactly. Yeah. Other than that, I am cool with the way the interior spots are for this year. Long term, I think they should be worrying about right guard. I don't know that that's a this year issue, especially I do think that there's some futzing around they can do with Evan Neal in that spot. He might actually be pretty good at that. To be determined for right now, but
it's worth exploring and seeing.
But yeah, I just don't think they can walk away.
Yeah,
I don't think they can walk away from the draft without a tackle. I just don't.
Agreed.
Flipping over to the other side, the edge room with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and then Tamon Fox and Victor Dimukeji.
I think that might be something if you can try to get a second wave free agent, maybe.
Interesting. Let's see. For me, I think that you can do that, but picking at 3, it's really easy to say I want them to draft Abdul Carter.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that'd be nice. I'm not gonna say, oh, how dare you make this pick, but in the grand scheme of the room, that to me that's building that rotation of abundance of a good position, which we've had on this team. Whether it was defensive ends a generation ago or great linebackers or something, just making a good position even better.
Right.
But in a realistic world, what do I really need for the room? I think I can pick up some depth piece, as a free agent.
I would agree with that. Yeah, what you need for the room is probably that. But I mean, if you're looking at it long term and what you'd like, Kayvon Thibodeau is not he's not a star, right? Like, he's just a solid edge guy. He's okay in coverage. He's okay rushing the passer. He's okay against the run. All of those things he's perfectly good at. He's not blowing anybody away. Brian Burns is a speed rusher. That's kind of his one thing that he's really good at. If you add somebody into the mix who is another version of Kayvon, where they're just all around good at being an edge rusher, it transforms the defense. And you have to also understand, that Brian Burns is signed through 2028. I believe that he has an out in
2028, my lord.
Yeah. I think he has an out in 2 years and a better out in 3 years, but out in 2 years.
There's a better chance we'll still have this podcast in 2028 than Brian Burns still be on this team then.
Yeah.
That'd be my prediction.
And Kayvon is only signed through 2025. Did they not pick up his 5th-year option?
I haven't seen that they have. I mean, this decision should be pretty soon, right?
I thought so. I don't know when it's supposed to be, but I thought it would have happened by now.
Hmm.
But either way, I think they still will. It seems like the right move.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
What's the value of not? I mean, he's not a bust. I mean, he's a solid NFL starter who's
Right.
doing his job. He's not, he hasn't owned the city. He's not an all pro, but he's, there's a cost to replace him, and he's fine what he's doing.
Let's flip over to defensive line. Just the interior guys. I don't want to get into the nuances. We can talk about, 0 or 4I or
Mm.
whatever position on the line. But for me, the way they've attacked this in the first wave of free agency, I'm actually okay if they don't do anything else this year. Um,
I,
but I do
I,
think that if it's not this year, they need to draft somebody next year. I would like to draft someone this year.
I agree. I think all things equal, for all the other needs on this team, I think there's greater needs. So I think we could probably get away with this year what we have. But you're right. It becomes a big priority starting next year, assuming what we need to be addressed this year is addressed.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I guess my decision is if you draft Abdul Carter, I can pass on a defensive lineman. If you don't draft Abdul Carter, I want a defensive tackle. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like some big move has to happen this year on the defensive line. It just doesn't have to be both.
agreed.
The linebacker spot. I would rather do a second wave free agency kind of move with this, but if there is a great linebacker prospect, which I don't know that there is this year, they could certainly use somebody to man the position for years. It would be great to have, Luke Kuechly on this team.
I think I want a depth piece. I think I'd go just for signing some guy.
Yeah. Um, the cornerback room. I feel like everyone probably thinks that this is a must draft position. I feel like I might be a broken record with this, but I feel like drafting corners is such a flip of a coin on what is already a flip of a coin.
I think we
So
made
many, yeah.
we've invested so much in the secondary this free agency already. I think we're kind of good for right now.
I mean, I would like to. There is still one thing missing, and this could be safety or corner. So if we want to, lump them together,
Hmm.
the one thing that I think is missing is like longtime veteran leadership. I know that sounds very
Well,
Dave Gettleman of me, but I
well, you're not
think
going to get that from the draft then, so it sounds
no,
like
not
we
at
need
all.
to move.
It's
Yeah,
second round free, but I don't care if it's a safety, a slot corner, an outside corner. I do think, probably some kind of third safety in a rotation, being a 8-year veteran who's got a lot of experience coordinating and communicating in the back end and
who
keeping
knows
things
who's rolling
together.
the league now at this point?
Basically, a Logan Ryan.
Yeah,
I think this team needs a Logan Ryan back there. I think they're very young. The oldest person in the secondary is 26 years old.
hmm. That's that's a pup. If he's your
Exactly.
oldest guy. Yeah,
So I mean that's what I think is missing, and you can't get that through the draft.
you
So
cannot. No, no.
um, and I mean the whole special teams room right now. I'm okay with them doing nothing. I know you
Wait,
want to move on from Graham, but they've re-signed the long snapper. Cool with that. They've re-signed the
mhm.
punter. Cool with that. They still have Jude McAtamey as the other kicker in the International Pathway Program. The reason I'm okay with it is because he kicked, I believe, flawlessly last year in summer.
Mhm.
So what limited bit we were able to see looked good. If he does that for a second year, I would love to move on from a $5.6 million kicker who's hurt and might have lost it for an
Yeah,
$840,000 kicker.
yeah, I agree. I think I would roll the dice with that because
I
something. If he's horrible, you can get some guy off the scrap key to get you through if you had to.
Yeah, exactly. It happens every year when a kicker
Hmm.
gets hurt. The
Hmm.
same cast of characters collect their weekly paycheck going to
Hmm.
some
I think
city.
I think Jan Stenerud is 83 years old and he's sitting by the phone right now if he needs to come in. So we're good.
Shane Graham, Nick Folk, Randy Bullock.
The treadmill goes on and
Yeah,
on.
hey, it's not a bad gig. You
No,
make
no.
a couple hundred thou to kick the ball a couple times, move on with your life, add an addition to your kitchen.
One of my best friends in high school was the kicker, and he just like the rest of the team was doing all these sprints and stuff, and he just just kicking. That's it. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's actually funny. The Senior Bowl, you see the kickers and long snappers and punters, like all day practice is going on, and they're just on the sideline, just snapping the ball.
Snapping, kicking. Yeah.
Um, all right, that's gonna do it for this episode. So big 501 next week. We are going to get into the quarterbacks. Wow,
Ooh.
it's finally happened. We're gonna be entering April, starting today for all of you listening.
About yeah, an hour and 9 minutes. Yeah.
But yeah, with April comes the draft, and with that comes quarterback stuff. So stay tuned. We will have some quarterback discussions next week. We'll move into more offensive positions following that, and then the other side of the ball. And before you know it, it's going to be Giants on the clock at 3.
We're 4 weeks and 3 days away from the draft. Wow. It's one of these things like we have 3 months before the draft, and all of a sudden, before you know it, it's draft week.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. It's draft week. It's a thunderstorm outside, and it's 70 degrees. It all happens very quickly.
Let's hit
it. All right, everyone. You guys know where to find us: iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.